What is up, guys? I'm Vincent, and I wanted to make a video where I talked about what my experience was like at UC Berkeley and doing the chemical engineering program through the College of Chemistry. And this is a very dense topic for me as a person because my relationship with UC Berkeley is kind of like a love-hate thing. There are a lot of things I really enjoyed about the program, and then there's a lot of things I didn't really like about the program. And hopefully in this video I'll be able to address uh, the pros and cons with doing what I did. And um, if you're someone who's considering being a chemical engineer or going to UC Berkeley, uh, hopefully my voice would add some insight into your decision making process. And before I get too deep into anything, I just want to make it clear that I am one guy. This is one story, and I was class of 2018. I was a transfer student. I came into UC Berkeley in 2016. I grad after transferring from Santa Rosa Junior College, and so this is what my experience was like when I started the program. And the very first thing I'll say that before I even started at UC Berkeley was I was really scared because I know UC Berkeley is known to be this very competitive uh, program, and getting an A at UC Berkeley, especially in the chemical engineering department, is a really big deal, and it's very tough to do. And you're going to be someone who comes in who is used to being the top scorer on your physics exam or whatever. Like in my junior college, it was usually pretty near the top of my class. And I mean, this is no surprise to many of you. When you come into UC Berkeley, everyone else was that same person who was top of their class. And so you just get used to being knocked down a few pegs or a lot of pegs. And, I still remember my very first class I took at UC Berkeley, which was the introduction or the upper div introduction to chemical engineering. And the professor was David Graves, and he's a very smart guy. He worked at Chevron. He talked about his experience at Chevron, um, and it's very intense. And chemical engineering is a very intense field. It's a huge field. Saying you're a chemical engineer is like saying you're a human being. Sometimes it's like, all right, you need to know a little bit more information to know about this person because you've got huge subfields within chemi, like process control is its own thing that you can focus your entire life on. And you've got process development, and if you just walk into like a biotech company, you're gonna have a lot better idea of how chemical engineers specialize, or what they do in an oil industry or all these other fields. So um, it's a huge field, and at Berkeley they really try to give you a taste of everything. And in my opinion, um, it's not necessarily the greatest way to do it because I feel like you can give students a bit more voice into what subfields they want to do. Like, for me, process control was pretty interesting, so I focused on that. But at the same time, you're going to be throwing just a lot of stuff at you, and you have to learn it very quickly, and it's going to be really stressful. And um, the thing with Berkeley is that they really hang people out to dry, or it feels that way for the undergrads, because when you go to UC Berkeley, there's this drive to be number one. They keep telling you, we expect excellence. That's the first thing out of the dean's mouth when I was with all my friends in the orientation, is that we expect excellence. This is going to be tough, and we know you guys are good. And for me, I really didn't like that. I didn't like hearing that because, as nice as it is to pat yourself on the back, I feel like there's kind of an arrogance to it sometimes too that really just turns me off. Like, I don't like people who, I get it. Like, you're smart, you're brilliant, you're passionate, you're doing big things, but I don't really like labeling, and I don't really like, if all you do is focus on being number one and you think about what everyone else is doing, you think about how you can do better, um, it can get kind of dark, and uh, it's all about finding the right balance in terms of how competitive you are versus how cooperative you want to be. How much do you want to see your peers do well? And this whole YouTube channel for me was really a way that I could just you know teach people what I learned along the way and what I wish I knew earlier uh, in the chemie program at Berkeley, so that I wouldn't have as hard of a time going through it a second time if I had to, or I could help my friends out who were struggling through it. So it is definitely a very big challenge to overcome, and just getting through the program is a huge accomplishment. And um, what inspires me about making these videos in the first place and why I'm on camera is just because I want to see people learn these tools, because I believe in my heart that if you can learn these concepts really well, you can change the world. You can change extraordinarily large and complicated processes, and you can optimize them, and you can improve the other people's quality of life just by knowing how to do a mass balance, or how to look at an IMC model and figure out what tuning parameters to use. And so the content is very dense, it's very high level sometimes, and it is very challenging for me as a person to kind of try to keep it high enough level so that general public can follow along with it. And that's something I really push myself hard to do, because I want to um, still be a human being. Because I feel like when you go to UC Berkeley and when you become an engineer, you start kind of living in this alternate reality, and you have these advanced topics, and you just take on a new vocabulary, and people really can't even understand what you're saying half the time. And what I write on these videos can look like Greek, and it's just like, that's not why I'm doing this. I'm doing this because I want to like help people learn all of the content to be able to follow along and to do this stuff. But I'm running a little bit off track. My point here is to talk about what it's like being a chemical engineer at UC Berkeley. And um, it's tough. And for me, I'm someone who wanted to apply to medical school. I still want to apply to medical school, and I knew I was going to take a hit on my GPA if I did it. And it's just, for me, it was a huge internal conflict I had in my head about, before I even started UC Berkeley, if this was something I should do, because I thought I might be shooting myself in the foot by going to Berkeley and knowing I'd get a lower GPA at the end of the day. But I stuck with it, and what helped me out more than anything was by making friends, by going to office hours, by talking to GSIs, which are basically teaching assistants, and that's probably the best thing you can do as an undergrad at Berkeley, is just get good at asking for help and get good at failing. And during our commencement address, I think one of my favorite speakers, he talked about, you got to get good at failing. That's basically this whole process, which is you got to get used to getting a midterm back and scoring a C minus on it, and you have to be able to bounce back, and you have to look at the areas that you need to improve in. You got to focus in those areas, and you got to realize when it's something's beyond your ability to handle it, you need to reach out for help. And implicitly, these are the lessons that UC Berkeley teaches you how to do. And there are things that you might be able to learn explicitly. I can verbally tell you it right now. Like, if you're someone who needs help, go ask for help. But it's not the same as actually going through the program. And like every morning and every night, I would just ask myself, what am I doing? And am I good enough to get through this? And, it's really hard. I'm not gonna lie, it's really hard, and I don't want to brag or start boasting about how intelligent I am. It's not intelligence. I mean, maybe a little bit has to do with intelligence, but I will say until I die that UC Berkeley and chemical engineering specifically is about sacrifice. And as a human being, to make it through the chemical engineering program, it's about sacrifice. It's about loving what you do or being driven enough in your work to keep coming back to it every single day and fail and still love it and still do those problem sets and still go to office hours and still ask questions and keep going. And along the way, make as many friends as you possibly can. That's the most cliche, oft quoted thing you'll hear during orientation at UC Berkeley, which is just make friends because you need people. You need a support network of people to help you when you can't do this stuff, when you are, crying the night before a midterm. You need to have people around you who are strong where you are weak, and you're strong where they're weak, and you form these mutually beneficial relationships, which is the key word there, among your peers and among human beings, because in the real world, that is how you get by. And, if you go to another school, like Santa Barbara has an excellent chemical engineering program. And I will say you'll probably learn more about chemical engineering at Santa Barbara than you will at Berkeley, because the teaching there, when I was at Berkeley, most of the resources I was using came from UC Santa Barbara, because they had excellent things that were all just publicly available for people to look at. And they knew this stuff better than I do. And I was like, if I really want to know this well enough to do good on a midterm or final or in my job, these are the resources I got to find. And so, what do you learn implicitly through UC Berkeley is that this is, you need to get good at finding other ways to get help when the professor didn't really explain it well enough for you to understand it. And you got to get used to being hung out to dry and fighting like hell to learn this stuff as best as you can while staying mentally sane the whole time through. And employers and people who aren't in UC Berkeley will look at this and they'll say, like, that's great, because that is the kind of person I want working for me, is someone who can keep fighting when they just failed or they got rejected. And yeah, I will agree with them on that. But what you don't get, and what you'll find among kids at UC Berkeley, is that it does develop a bad taste in their mouth with the school. Because, when I transferred from my junior college, my tuition expenses went up 20-fold. I was spending 20 times more every semester in tuition than I was spending in my junior college. And the quality of teaching was honestly not 20 times better. It was sometimes worse than what I was getting in my junior college. So financially, there was a toll, but you can't let these things get to you. You just have to understand that at the end of the day, it's about getting the degree and proving to the world that you had what it took to get through the program. And, you need to find other things you do outside of school to keep you sane. Like for me, it was riding my bike and working on cars and working on bikes and gardening and doing all these other things. And if you don't have those things, you will go insane and you will drop out. And a lot of my friends that came from the junior college that I was at and transferred into UC Berkeley, they dropped out within the first 2 weeks. A lot of them did, and it sucked, and it hurt me, and it scared the hell out of me, because I was like, these were guys I know who are smart, passionate, hardworking people, and they work harder than I do, and they're dropping out. And it was just like, it was really hard. And so another reason why do I have this YouTube channel is I just want to be there to help people who are struggling, who are feeling like giving up. Just know that someone like me can get through. I know you can get through. And just, even when you feel bad, just keep telling yourself you're there for a reason. If you got into UC Berkeley, you were doing something right. You had a really good GPA, you had good statements, you've got a family, you've got friends who care about you, who want you to succeed. I want you to succeed. Just, it is beautiful at the end of the day when I think about it. And what I also wanted to do when I came to UC Berkeley was knowing in the back of my mind how competitive this program is, and knowing how, you know, I almost didn't go to UC Berkeley because I was so scared about how much I was going to have to work and how I thought I was just not going to be able to do it. The fear you have is not being good enough, again and again and again, in your head, of hearing that again. And you need to just take a step back. And for me, writing helps a lot. Just a pen and paper, no computer, no phone or tablet, just pen and paper with no distractions, and just write down how you feel and how your thoughts are inaccurate and how you are a good person, you're a smart person, you can get through this. And, it's implicitly, you can say going to UC Berkeley made me a great person. But, and this is the catch, I was already a very driven person. I was already scoring very high in my exams at, in junior college. I was already, on track to probably having a good career. There's a cause and effect, or correlation does not equal causation with this stuff. So it's like one of the issues I have with UC Berkeley is just this overarching concern towards being quote unquote the top public university in the world. And that creates a culture in which people are so focused on doing research, getting published, getting cited, getting the best grade you possibly can on a midterm. And in my opinion, you lose sight of the more important things in life, which is just finding stuff and work that is meaningful to you. And, for some kids, even in the chemical engineering program, doing research is what they find most meaningful. If you find a lab that just resonates with what you're doing and what you want to do with your career, that's beautiful. I'll say most kids at my graduation still have no idea what they want to do when they graduated. And, it's definitely scary, and I have other videos talking about that subject, but, one of the things for me that I just really want people to take home is that as a UC Berkeley alumni now, I'm not going to sit here and tell you you have to go to UC Berkeley to be successful in your life. That is the last thing I will tell anybody. And I'm not going to tell you also you have to be a chemical engineer to be successful in life. Doing those two things will make you a little more successful in your career. Life is so much more than just your career. Your life has so much more to it than just your job and your education. And especially after you finish college, this is the part where you actually begin to think about what is meaningful to you. And, I really don't want to trash UC Berkeley. I really don't want to trash any kid getting an education, because I've said this before, getting educated is arguably one of the best things you can do with your life. Just learn more about how other people think, learn more about a new discipline, think about how that new discipline has things to do with what you're also working on in another field and why it might matter to you. And, just push yourself to try things that you wouldn't have done before. Like me, I'm pushing myself to make videos and record myself, even though it's not something I would usually do, because I don't like appearing as vain or egotistic. That's not my goal with any of these videos. My goal is to just help people learn from the mistakes that I've made, or hear my thoughts on these things, so that if you are someone who is where I was, like if we go back 3 years when I was thinking about should I say yes or no to the chemical engineering program at UC Berkeley, you at least have my perspective on it, and it might help you. And you have my other videos to look at to know, this is what chemical engineering is really like. Because to be honest, I really didn't know that much about chemical engineering before I started at Berkeley. And I just happened to write a decent personal statement and have grades that were good enough to be accepted there. Um, and so I think, if I had this channel to look at before and I could see, this is what a chemical engineering does in practice, and this is what it looks like after you've graduated the program. I'll leave it to you to call me successful or not. Um, it would help me make a more informed decision. And I'm happy to answer other questions, so feel free to leave comments. And if it's a good enough question, I might just make a whole video about it. And we'll see if people are even interested in knowing what it's like to go to UC Berkeley and to be a chemical engineer, because this was something I wanted to say initially. Um, the chemical engineering program at UC Berkeley is like its own thing, completely different from someone's experience as a bioengineer, because that's in the College of Engineering, and it's a completely different world within UC Berkeley. Now you do take some classes between the two colleges, so um, and the other thing is the school changes, the culture changes over time. So this is like a snapshot of my experience when I was going to UC Berkeley from 2016 to 2018. So take it with a grain of salt. Probably a lot of the faculty are largely the same, and the courses are probably taught largely the same. So this stuff is hopefully still relevant and pertinent to people who are interested. But it's very exciting. I'll say that it is stressful. There's a lot of days where I'm just freaked out, or I was freaked out. But it is a very exciting field for me personally as an engineer, because I want to in my career design and develop products to change the world, and do really big things like what you get at UC Berkeley. All I know on a positive note, what you get at UC Berkeley and what you get through chemical engineering is a perspective on how to think about processes and how to ramp up production of something. So like, the biologist or the chemist will have this cure for cancer, and on the benchtop it's working great. And the job of the engineer, the job of the chemical engineer, is to come in and then say, all right, you've got this great chemical, and how do we make 10,000 gallons of it so that we can actually sell this and get it into the real world where people can actually be cured of cancer? And so chemical engineer will walk in and say, like, you want to use a batch or a continuous process. You're going to want to make sure that you have a heat exchanger of this size. You're going to want to go with this reactor volume running at this pressure. And, this is how we're going to optimize this process. This is going to have to scale up production. These are the expenses we're going to have to come across. So we're going to find funding by doing this and this. And, that is the engineering component of it. I had the misconception initially that chemical engineering was going to deal a lot with organic chemistry, because I'm a huge fan of organic chemistry and biology. But it's really not that. It's a completely different discipline that deals with just scaling up production and taking very good ideas or products and then getting them into the real world. Because I think of engineers not as scientists. I think of them as realists who have to take science or new science and get it into, or make enough of a product to get it into the real world so that people can actually derive utility from it. And so that is the value that engineers provide society. And for that for me is like the thing that I am happy about, knowing that I did engineering. And if you're writing a personal statement, if you're going to try to write a personal statement off this video, you're going to want to cite examples of how you've done this in the past, or how you've done similar things in the past that are relevant to engineering, that show that you're someone who would do well as a chemical engineer. And I hope this video helps add some light into what this whole thing's like. And the question that I asked people a lot was, would you do it again? And when I think about that, I think my answer to that question would be yes, because I made a lot of good friends. I went to UC Berkeley. I joined labs, which was one of the most important things I did with my time, because it helped me do stuff other than engineering. And, it's life is a process and there's no certainty. So you can't sit here and tell me definitively that you're going to enjoy chemical engineering at UC Berkeley. I know a lot of people who joined and then dropped out because they didn't like it. So you don't know until you're actually there and you're actually doing it. And that's part of the beautiful thing with life is you just gotta um, keep trying and failing. And sometimes you find things that you resonate with and you can keep chugging away at, and you make good friends and you meet people along the way, and it makes your life that much more meaningful. And I hope this video helps, and let me know if you have any questions, and thank you for watching.